I'm Cynthia, and I'm the host of the reality series, CPS the Horror Stories. Not an attorney or a social worker, just a mom who has been through the experience of CPS, having her children removed, and after 2 years of fighting, I did get them back. But that doesn't mean that we don't still struggle with the trauma and devastation and corruption that CPS really is. I don't believe that they are about protecting children anymore. I believe it is about the dollar that is stamped to each child's head. So, John and Kayla, can you introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about you, where you're from, and about your babies.
So my name's John. Kayla, we're both from the Washington, D.C. metro area. I'm a firefighter of 20 years, very successful business owner. Wife, she's a very successful student right now in college. We left the D.C. area to move to the South, first tried out Orlando, didn't like it. And then we went up to Georgia, tried a couple different cities and whatnot, and didn't really like the people there a lot. And then as we were trying to plan to, figure out where we want to go to next, it's when we came in contact with a pediatrician after moving to a different town. And pediatrician met our daughter, who's now 2, as of yesterday. She met her once. My wife took her in and just didn't get a good feeling from her, and politely told her, we don't think you're a good fit, so we're probably going to find somebody else. So she took that in a very hard way, and we didn't think anything of it. We left and whatnot. I was out with a friend of mine just hanging out, and I get a message from her that CPS is here, or they call it in Georgia DFACS, Department of Family and Children's Services. I break every law coming home, just running lights, red light, stop signs. I knew exactly what was going to happen, what was going to go down. I get there, the fire department's there. Most embarrassing time, the police are there. I'm a firefighter with that fire department that came. And when they saw me there, it was pretty much 180 when they thought about me. I was like, oh dear. And they're trying to get her to take my daughter to the hospital because the doctor said that we neglected her. We neglected to feed her. She was having failure to thrive and whatnot. None of which any doctors ever said about her. All the medical records showed we took care of her completely fine. We gave her a great life. I mean, she has a $50,000 college savings fund now. She has all the food in the world, all the toys in the world. She's just living the dream. And this doctor, she just didn't like that, I guess somebody stood up there and said, hey, you're not a good fit for us, so we're going to leave. We're not going to work with you. And that changed everything.
And you said, I'm not sure if you said it just now because I know I heard it earlier. Did you say it is a woman?
Yes.
It was. Yes.
And what was her race, her ethnicity?
Middle Eastern?
Middle Eastern descent.
Do you think by any chance she could have, well, I'd be asking you to assume, so never mind. Go ahead.
Right. Who knows? I think it was more of the
standing up to her part.
I guess she thought she was the best, and everybody would want to stay with her practice. And then somebody finally came up to her and said, you're not a good fit.
Because when I was there, she kept pushing a whole bunch of procedures on Haley, which is our oldest daughter, that I didn't feel the need to even have done to her. So it was just like she was there for the money, not really there to take care of my child. So that's why I found another pediatrician.
Yeah, how old was your child?
I think it was like either
18 months.
Yeah, it was probably her 18-month visit.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like, as a parent, we have the right to doctor shop. It's not like you're doctor shopping for meds and stuff like that, but we know as parents what we're comfortable with, when we take our child in, and even the kids react. And I don't care how old they are, that they respond well. And, it matters how long they're in the room and how they look at us, and are they just rushing, and, are we just a number, or are we, hey, I'm Cynthia, this is my child, George, and Bob, and Fred, or, hey, okay, I'm here, okay, because I've been treated like that, and I don't like it, and I feel I have every right to walk out. Thank you, but I'm gonna go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's like you're in a concentration camp almost. You're told what to do. You're expected
Yeah.
to do it a certain way, and if you don't do it that way, then you get punished. And we're not talking about a slap on the wrist.
Right.
We're talking about an egregious attack on your civil rights, your own blood. And that's kind of where it went from there. When that investigator came by, he changed his story 5 times. And as we were continuing on, we finally took our daughter to the hospital to entertain their menagerie, where everything was fine. But what the Department of Children and Family Services did is they ordered multiple tests to lag everything, slow everything down, so we couldn't take her home, so they could get a court order to take custody of her. So
Can I repeat that just so I'm clear? So the doctor's the one who called CPS, correct?
Correct.
And did you state the reason as to, was it medical neglect?
Yes.
Failure to thrive.
Failure to thrive.
What
Medical neglect, failure to thrive, failure to feed her, and all that.
Let's really fast go over that doctor appointment from beginning to end. Tell me all of that, because I'm curious.
Well, it was just your basic 18-month checkup kind of thing, you know, each time that you have to take the kid in for all those appointments since birth. But they just looked at her. She barely even did a full exam of her. She just looked at her, and opened her diaper and, you know, checked down there as well, but really didn't do that much. She was just,
No blood work.
she wanted to do blood work for something, but other than that, they said they couldn't do that there, and then they were giving her 18-month shot, but that was it. But that's it. So she was just really rushy, and then she said she wanted to do some kind of fluoride treatment for her mouth. Just see,
I didn't get the fluoride treatment. If you're a doctor, you know, you treat medical conditions. If you're a dentist, you treat dental conditions. Fluoride,
Right.
I don't know where that came from, and I think that's what kind of rubbed her the wrong way.
Yeah.
You know, if you want more money, you're going to push as much as you can.
Because she kept pushing that on me. She's like, I was like, I just had it recently done at her dentist appointment. She's like, well, it's okay. You can get it done again. I was just like,
unless you're a DDS, you can't really do that.
Now, let's talk about her record really fast. Has she ever had any medical issues?
Never.
No.
Okay.
She's a very healthy child.
Has she ever been underweight or overweight?
No.
Has she ever had any test that has come back irregular?
Nope.
Did you make a decision to immunize her?
Yes.
Okay. So where is she failing to thrive?
She was failing to thrive because the doctors didn't like how we treated them. They didn't like that we were in control. We were making the choice to.
Right.
We felt comfortable.
I totally get that. I'm just curious. Now, how soon after that doctor appointment did CPS show up?
The next day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, all right. My question was going to be if, when you left, if you had already done some work to find a new doctor or not. Not yet. Okay. Well, you at the moment, it's not like you had anything to be concerned about. I mean, you just had her weighed and measured and all of that stuff. I'm sure she's walking, talking, you know, baby talk, but she's doing these things. There's not a concern.
Yeah, that's kind of where things went.
Yeah, you're perfect.
I'm sure if we stayed there and kept her as a patient, this never would have happened.
I'm sure. That's why I'm badgering you, because I'm proving that there's not one reason that anybody should have been called.
Absolutely not. No.
So go on. So let's go to the, so how, please go over the conversation that you had, that as to why you chose to not use her as the doctor anymore.
I didn't like her bedside manner. Like, she was always really rushy. Didn't like, if I had a question, she didn't want to answer it, or she would just skip over it. Like, so it's like she didn't even want to hear what I thought was wrong with our daughter. So it's just like, it was like she had to be right.
So the other thing is, this is your first child.
Yes.
Which, again, as new parents and old parents, you have the right to find that doctor that you connect with.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, so moving on to the next day. Oh, last question about that day. How were you treated by the other staff when you chose to leave? And did you leave in the middle of the appointment, or when it was all done and said, I just don't think this is working out, we're gonna break up?
I left at the end of the appointment so that way we could get her vaccination, because she was supposed to get her 18-month vaccination.
So it's not like you were in the middle of the thing and you're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
No.
So it was a very
Professional.
professional, cooperative, visit.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
This isn't gonna work.
I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm so sorry. Okay, I'll keep my opinion and comment till later, but let's go to the next day. So, John, you get called by Kayla.
Yes.
Okay, that all these people are at your house.
Yep.
Well, the people hadn't showed up yet. They showed up after John had arrived. The investigator showed up at the door and wanted to talk to me. And at the time, because of my pregnancy, I wasn't the smartest person, because I wouldn't have let him in if I really knew what it was about or anything like that. But going through all those hormones, of course, I decided to let him in, and then that's when he started asking me all these questions, which led me to believe that the pediatrician that we saw the day before was the one that called. And then after he was done interviewing me and then did the tour of the house, that's when I had called John to tell him that they were here.
So, who showed up at the door first?
The investigator.
And was there a cop with them, or just the investigator?
It was just the investigator.
Did they hand you a warrant?
No.
Okay. Do you know now, because I did not either, do you know now if they don't have a warrant, that door gets shut?
Yes, I know that now.
I knew that before, but I wasn't there.
Right. Kayla, just kidding. I didn't know it. Trust me. I none of them. I don't think there's one. Actually, I take it back. Of the 130 interviews I've done so far, there's been one person who was aware that.
Yeah, Cynthia, it's almost like everybody in the United States needs to know a million different laws in order to protect their civil rights.
Yes.
One of them, you cannot let anybody in. You're allowed to record them in your own home. You're allowed to have a lawyer present. You're allowed to not gain them access, period, unless they have a judicial order.
Yep. And the other thing that's hard is the fact that when you don't have anything to hide, you feel, sure, come in.
Right.
I don't know if you heard my story the other day with the police. No.
Yeah.
So the other day, my daughter that you just saw was throwing a temper tantrum because she didn't like the rules I gave her. And I sent her to her room because I was on a work call, and she's in her room screaming bloody murder. And my neighbor, I live in an apartment, and somebody called and said that they don't know if I was beating her or what, but she was screaming and they needed to come check on her. I got a knock on my door. My son said, "Who is it?" And he turned and he goes, "It's the police." I'm like, okay. Like, I didn't think anything of it. I've had the police show up before, and they said, "We got a call about your kid." I was like, my heart just, and ever since then, and that was just a few days ago, but ever since then, I can't tell you how many random knocks I've had on my door from people that I normally know when somebody's coming over, and I have like a panic attack every time. But the stupid thing that I don't know if it was stupid or not, because the cop did believe me and stopped everything and left. But I let them talk to me and my kid, and I let them see her. Because again, I have nothing to hide, but that's always is what ends up getting you in trouble. And it's like, but what will happen if I'm like, no, you can't see my kid? Then CPS for sure would have shown up.
Well, they would have gotten a court order, of course.
Exactly. So it's just like it's so hard to know what to do, regardless of what our rights are. So Kayla, I'm there with you. I just feel bad.
Negative no matter what. Nothing that
Yeah.
good no matter.
Okay,
Yeah.
so sorry. So an investigator comes, and then did you allow him to come in your house?
Yes.
Okay.
And he interviewed me, and then he asked me where my husband was, and I was like, well, he's out with a friend, but he's supposed to be back later. And then he asked me if I would be okay to take Haley to the hospital, and I was just like, my husband has the vehicle, I don't have the vehicle. And he's like, well, we have to get her checked out. So that's when the fire he's the one that called the fire department and everything. And then the police, just because they heard the call, the 911 call, the police ended up showing up too.
He called 911.
He called 911 as it was an emergency.
And what was his state? Did you hear him, what he said?
No, because he went outside and made the call.
Well, the medical records that we got said that the dispatch was reported as child neglect.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Did he see your child?
Yeah.
Before the call?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. People, man. What were some of the questions that he asked you in the interview, and how long was it roughly?
Seemed pretty quick. I mean, he was just asking me about her health, and then that's how it kind of like when was the last time you took her to the doctor, and that kind of stuff. That's what led me to believe that it was a pediatrician that reported us about it. And then after he had went outside to apparently make a phone call, that's when I called John, and then he was on his way home.
Okay, so did the fire trucks and everything did the investigator come back in and say, oh, by the way, I called the police and stuff, or whatever, I made a call to 911, or he just came back and then nothing?
Yeah. Next thing I know, I heard, ambulances, fire trucks, and all that kind of stuff's coming, and I didn't understand, because I thought I called my husband so that way he'd be coming home so we could take our daughter in, not that so she would have to ride an ambulance.
Right.
But yeah, no, they made me get in the ambulance with our daughter and take her that way. And then John, did you get there before they left and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I got so freaked out in the ambulance because I'd never been in one or anything like that, and I didn't. So I grabbed my daughter, and then I ran back inside because I was in panic. I was freaking out.
Yeah. So, okay, John, let's switch to you real fast. Even though Kayla said, I want to hear what you heard, what she said to you on the phone.
She told me DFAX is here, get here quick. And that's all I needed to know. And that's when I plowed through the roads and we came home.
And when you pulled up, let's go over, I know you already said it, but let's go over that again. You pull up.
I pull up, there's an ambulance there, there's 2 cops there. There's a gentleman outside, and I didn't know that was the investigator at the time. And then pulling up right behind me was a fire truck.
And you said it's the same fire truck of the department that you work for? And did you know the gentlemen and women that were on the truck at that time?
Every day.
Okay. I don't know if you knew this about me. I used to be a firefighter, and it's such a credible job, like the respect and stuff, honorable. How sad is it that you were instantly humiliated?
Basically, get discredited, almost like you can ruin your credit by making one missed payment. It takes 7 years to fix.
Right.
It's very
So, yeah. So you pull up, they're there. What happened?
So I get out of the car. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. My wife's inside at the time. The medics are outside just kind of doing their thing. The police are there. This investigator, I didn't know who he was at the time, just says hi to me. And I go inside and I try to figure out what's going on. And I talk to her. She's in a panic. And that's when the investigator comes in and tells me that we need to take our daughter to the hospital in the ambulance. And then the police are behind them enforcing it.
Okay. Did you both get in the ambulance or did you drive behind?
I drove behind, but I told the gentleman that we'll take her to the hospital ourselves. And he said, no, we need to take her in the ambulance. So before we could have taken her, now the ambulance had to take her.
Kayla, what happened in the ambulance?
The medics were pretty much nice to me when all the way to the hospital. I mean, they barely even really said anything to me. They were just doing their job. So, I mean, they were just pretty quiet. So, but I mean, our daughter was kind of freaking out, obviously.
Right. Did they have to do any type of like treatment or anything like that to her, or she's just in her car seat being watched?
Wasn't even in a car seat.
What?
No. Our car seat was in our vehicle. They didn't even put her in a car seat. It's the stretcher. They have an infant kind of one that they lay out on the stretcher, and then they fasten her into that. It's not a car seat at all.
John, is that a normal thing? Because when I was a firefighter, when we would take a kid to the hospital, unless they had been in an accident or something, they would remain in their car seat on the stretcher.
Well, in that kind of instance, a kid would have to be in a actual approved car seat, and the car seat would then be strapped to the gurney, which is then attached to the floor of the ambulance.
Right.
So, yeah. Any other makeshift item that is not approved by the Department of Transportation is illegal to use to transport a child under 80 pounds of weight.
So I guess what I'm asking is, do you feel the way that they transported your daughter was appropriate?
Absolutely not. It was against protocol.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. Agreed. Okay, so
But it wasn't an actual car seat you put in your car. That is against protocol. That is against the Department of Transportation guidelines. And they were basically transferring her without a seatbelt on.
right.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, so and then what happens? You arrive at the hospital.
Arrive at the hospital, we check in, we go to triage, and that's when the investigator has a chat with me first, and then has a chat with Kayla.
No, just had a chat with you.
That's right, just had a chat with me. Your microphone's off.
sorry, that's weird. I said, and what was said in the chat? What did it consist of?
So the investigator asked me, you know, do you know why we're here? And I told him, I have no idea. I'm hoping you're telling me. He says, well, there's some accusations that you neglected your child and you, she has failure to thrive, a diagnosis. I said, okay, so where's this neglect coming from? And he says, what your pediatrician, sorry, he didn't say what your pediatrician said. He's just, I can't tell you who said it. It's just what has been accused. She's gonna go take care of her other daughter.
Yeah.
So while I was chatting with him, I was really digging into him pretty hard, trying to figure out what's going on, trying to understand where his mindset was. And he comes over to me after I'm asking him questions about himself personally. I'm asking him about his life. Where is he getting this from? Does he have paperwork? Does he have proof? Does he have evidence about these accusations? You know, I get he can't tell me who it is, but he needs to have proof before he can even call 911, force us to go to a hospital, force us to get testing done. And he didn't even produce it. And he scoots over next to me and says, you know what, I can't stand white people. I'm gonna make sure you never see your daughter again.
So then what?
So
At that time, when you were talking to him, were they doing a checkup on your daughter, or were they still like in the waiting room?
they're doing a couple tests in her room, and me and him were talking in a private room with the door closed.
Okay.
But nobody ever heard that. I recorded it on my phone, but I can't do anything with it until my lawyer is done with the lawsuit.
Oh, good. You are filing. I was going to ask you because already I've heard so many things, but okay. So what happens? Can you repeat the couple things that he said in the interview? I'm sorry, because I was thinking and.
So he asked me, do you know what neglect is? And I told him I sure do know what neglect is. I said, okay, well, where is this coming from? He says, your daughter has a diagnosis of failure to thrive. And I told him, I said, that's news to me. He says, okay. He says, well, you're being accused of neglect. I said, well, yeah, that's lovely. I don't know who would accuse me of neglect. And I can disprove that real easily. He said, well, okay, well, I need your parents' information, their phone number, and a bunch of other information. And I told him, I'm not giving you any information until you start giving me information. So you either tell me who accused me or we're not having a conversation. And he said, okay. And that's when I started digging into him. So what church do you go to? You believe in God? I started really trying to screw with him because I could tell he wasn't, going down a road of trying to protect my daughter. He had an agenda. He had a very wrong one-way agenda that was predetermined before he ever heard about us. And that's when he scooted over next to me and said, I hate white people, and I'm going to make sure you're never going to see your daughter again.
What color was he? Or ethnicity?
He's African American.
I hate white people.
I hate white people, yes.
And you recorded that?
Recorded the whole thing.
Fantastic.
So I kind of stepped away from him for a little bit and processed that because I was a little shocked. Never thought I would come in contact with that because I've never treated anybody different based on their color. I'm colorblind to hate myself. And to see that happen to me, it's like, whoa. This guy's a government official, and he's using his power to facilitate his agenda. Holy, excuse the next word. And I said that to myself in my head while I'm just thinking about what the hell do I do now? So I just said to him, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm going to pray for you. I wish the best for you. Let's get on with this. So that's when we left the room and we continue on with the rest of the tests in the hospital.
And what did the doctors say when they came in? What tests did they run or do, or checkup things did they do? And then what were the results?
So they tested everything you could possibly think of, every function in her body, all blood results, the whole CBC, kidney functions, liver functions, brain functions, hearing tests, vision tests, everything you can possibly think of. And every single test came back completely normal. Then when she got admitted, they wanted, the Child Protective Services wanted more tests done. So they
why was she admitted?
They wanted her admitted. And they have the power in that state to do that.
Really?
They do.
To tell a doctor who said there's nothing wrong with this child, admit her.
Admit her and test her with this, test her with that.
That is crazy. Do you happen to know what the tests that were requested are?
Yeah. There's too many to mention, but I mean, one was an X-ray. One
okay.
Made no sense. Hearing test, that made no sense. Like
I can see the X-ray. Let me tell you why. Because I have heard of, like, you know, if they're looking for fractures or previous healing bones.
I get if they're looking for fractures, but if there's no report for physical abuse,
of course,
then why are you doing an X-ray?
Agreed, 100%.
It was to slow everything down so we couldn't prove to the doctors it's time to discharge us.
Right.
So he could continue to go to the court and get an emergency petition for custody. And he did it that same week he met with us the first time. He got custody. He came in and kicked her out when I wasn't there. I had to come get her. We came home and lost it. That's when we got a lawyer.
No, I'm sorry, John. Just take a breath. I'm assuming that you're believers. Can I just pray really fast? Okay. Heavenly Father, God, I just thank you for this family right here, Lord. They're beautiful, amazing people, Lord, that have a heart for you and they love you, Lord. God, I know what they have gone through is so traumatizing. Father, I just ask that you give them peace in this moment. Lord, I thank you for their strength in sharing their story that's going to help others. Lord, I ask that you just protect their family, God. Please keep the enemy away, Father, because that really is who is controlling the department. And Father God, I just thank you that they have two beautiful babies, Lord. And again, God, I just ask right now, Father, that you remove the fear and anxiety and just reliving the moment of all of this traumatic stuff, Father, and just give them your peace and love and reassurance. I thank you, God, that their marriage is they just, the way they comfort one another, Lord, and love each other and have been able to work through this stuff together, God. I just thank you for that. We just love you, Lord, and thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we got a lawyer. It took a while because a lot of them didn't want to take the case because it was too soon. It was happening too quick. A lot of lawyers don't want to deal with Child Protective Services. We found one that did. And luckily I saved every medical record. I don't know why I did that. Every stupid note from every doctor she's ever seen in her entire life, I sent over to this lawyer, and she was shocked. Didn't know why we were even here. why our daughter was taken from us. And this happened on a Thursday. We met with the lawyer, or I talked to her on the phone on a Friday. This was in March, so it was during the pandemic, middle when it all started. So we can't go to the hospital. We can't visit her. We can't do nothing. So for the whole weekend, we don't have our daughter.
Now, question, what was the day that they admitted her?
It was
Right.
It was on a Tuesday.
A Tuesday. And from that night when they admitted her, were you allowed to stay the night that night?
Yes.
And then when they came back, I'm assuming, I think you said the next day, right? Or no?
They came back on Thursday, and that's when they issued the warrant that was signed by the judge for emergency custody.
Now, when up until that point, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 days, were they still doing tests each day or just holding her?
Yes, each day.
They were doing tests each day.
Probably
So
about 4 to 5 tests a day.
So they have this poor, healthy child in the hospital taking up a bed for a sick child, and they're running tests on her. And I just want to explain to people, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I've seen children in the hospital. They're in a cage, a metal cage. That's a crib, but then with bars on it.
Correct.
And they really can't get out because they want them in there. Now, was she hooked up to anything like an IV or anything like that?
An IV. She had a blood pressure cuff, taking her blood pressure every 15 minutes.
15.
Even when she was trying to sleep. A nurse would come in and take her temperature every half an hour. Through her ass.
Were you still breastfeeding at that time or anything like that?
No.
She rejected it after about 2 months. So
Okay. So was the only times that she could come out, if even, to like feed her and stuff like that?
Feed her, change her, or if they even had physical therapy come by, they had speech therapy come by.
A nutritionist came
A
by.
nutritionist.
I'm assuming you had insurance, right?
Oh, no. See, this was all covered by DPAC because this was them. They're doing.
Okay. I was like, man, they're running up your bill.
So yeah, so everything completely normal until Thursday comes around. I'm thinking everything's going good. I'm thinking in the back of my head something's going to happen though. On about Wednesday, that's when I started gathering all the paperwork. I had a few more things I didn't have from some doctors, and I got them before Thursday. And that's when I get the call that investigator comes in the room while she's there and says, "Your daughter's ours." And she calls me and explains it to me, and I tell her, "Well, you need to ask for a warrant." And he didn't provide it. She told him to get out, and that's when he just handed it to her. So he didn't hand it to her at first. He didn't want to for whatever reason. He handed it to her after.
After what again?
After asking for the warrant a second time. And then that's also when he got the hospital security to forcibly remove her from the hospital.
Were you there, John, or no?
No, he wasn't. He was at home.
So,
at that point.
how did they forcefully remove you? Like, what did they do?
They told me to gather all my things, and pretty much they brought up a wagon so I could put all my stuff in there because I was staying at the hospital with Haley. But yeah, the next thing I know, they wouldn't even let me say goodbye to her. Like I couldn't even hug my daughter goodbye. And they were like trying to push me out of the door. Sorry.
No, please don't apologize. Wow, okay. And so, I'm sorry. This stuff is really hard. Like to hear. I can't even imagine going through it and then having to relive it. So did they take you all the way to your vehicle?
They just took me all the way down to the lobby because I had to wait for John to arrive.
So you're humiliated as security is walking you out of a hospital. So John pulls up. What happens then?
I just told him exactly what happened.
What?
I just tell him exactly what happened.
You get in the car and go home.
What did the warrant look like? What did it have on there?
I had the state of Georgia seal. I had a judge's signature. I had our daughter's name. I had a date that was signed, and it showed that it did give the department custody of our daughter.
Temporary custody.
Temporary.
So you go home. What's the first thing that you guys do?
Take a breather for an hour.
Were you guys given a court hearing date at that time?
Monday.
Yeah.
Monday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Mm-hmm.
That's an awful long time to be away from your daughter while she's in the hospital all by herself. Do you have access to be able to hear what's going on or no?
Nope. We couldn't see any of the test results or any of the tests that they were running on her. We couldn't go and see her. There was nothing that we could do.
The only thing I could think of is my white child is alone with a black government investigator who hates white people. What is going to happen?
I don't know all of the state laws for every state. But here, when your child is with the department, if they have not removed your rights, you still have the legal right to know what's going on with medical things. Is that true in your state as well?
When they take, well, we don't live in Georgia anymore, but when they take custody, they take everything, all parental rights.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
So yeah, that's when we get the lawyer involved. I have a long conversation with her the next day, probably about 3 hours on the phone after I sent all the documents to her the previous day. And she says, okay, I'm going to review everything over the weekend. She works through the weekend. She's emailing me back and forth over the weekend, just making sure we got all the documents, questions about certain visits, whatnot, making sure everything matches up, adds up. And she says, we'll see you on Monday.
Okay, so what happens when you go to court on Monday? Oh, I have another question really fast. During this time before court and since the day that this all happened, did you work at all at the fire department? By choice, by schedule, or were you put on the hold?
By choice.
Okay. Just curious, why? Why did you choose?
Because I was embarrassed to go back and see the same people that saw me at my house with my daughter and the accusations that were brought up.
Yeah, I figured. Okay, so you go to court on Monday, and then what happens? Oh, at that point, did you have a hired attorney? Okay. So what happens?
We get there early. we meet with the attorney, we go over everything. She has a book this big of records, and we go over how we're gonna fight this in court. And we're waiting for the hearing to start. And we go up to the courtroom outside, and there's a foster agent there talking to us about, oh, we're coming here to talk to you about long-term care, taking your daughter, we'll give her to a good family and whatnot, blah, 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 blah. I said, we're not going to have this conversation because we're taking her home today.
So what does the social worker and all of that say in court?
Well, there was a department attorney was there with the investigator and another social worker, which was the foster social worker. Our attorney talked to their attorney, and their attorney refused to let go, even though we had a clear case that that all these allegations were erroneous, but the attorney still wanted the judge to hear it.
Was there a guardian of Lightem? Is that how you say it? Was there an attorney for your daughter?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And did they say anything?
They were neutral to both us and the department, and strictly on our daughter's side.
Okay. At the point of court, were you able to get the records from your daughter being in the hospital?
Oh, yeah, I had them all. I made sure I downloaded them as soon as I could.
And was she still in the hospital on that Monday? Okay, so they hadn't removed her and put her in a foster home or anything. Okay. So what did the judge say?
After 2 hours of listening to the investigator testify, and be cross-examined, and listening to him lie on multiple different questions under oath in the courtroom, the end result was we got our daughter back. Well, we got custody back, so we were able to go to the hospital and take her home.
I bet that was a very emotional moment.
Even though they lied to the judge. And we heard stories about this agency before we even met them in this instance. Georgia has probably the worst rap record on CPS case histories I've ever heard of. And I've heard them from friends down there. I've heard them from coworkers. I've heard them from people that don't even live there, never lived there. And that's why it freaked the hell out of me. Because I know what they want to do. They have a predetermined agenda to take the child from their families, put them into foster care for their own financial gain.
So, what were the lies? I'm pretty sure it's the things that you've already said, but what are the lies that stood out the most?
There are a lot of little things, but there were a couple big things. Just things like the investigator testified that I threatened to remove my daughter from the hospital. I never did that.
And you have that on recording?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, you leave, how did it feel, and how exactly did the judge say that you're getting your kids back?
Judge talked to our daughter's attorney, and our daughter's attorney had no problem with it. even though the opposing side wanted to keep her. The judge said she wants us to make sure she gets seen at doctors, get any specialist follow-ups as recommended, be fed, whatever it might be, blah, 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 everything we've been doing. There's nothing out of the ordinary, nothing out of the normal common day-to-day routine. And then but have weekly weight checks and whatnot with another pediatrician. And that was it.
Now, when that day was done, did they close the case that day, or did they keep it open for like a review type of thing?
They kept it open for a review.
How long?
It was about 30 days after that.
And then you got the papers with the...
Clean. And we got it discussed.
So I noticed you don't live there anymore. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, that state. We refuse to live in that state.
Now, what are you doing for work where you are? Are you a firefighter still?
I decided to be a firefighter again. I'm not going to let somebody stop
Good for
me.
you. Good.
I'm not let anybody stop me from helping the public. Ever.
So the next thing, how old is that daughter now?
You just turned 2 yesterday.
Happy birthday. And you mentioned you had another one.
Yep.
Yep.
And is it a girl also? Congratulations.
And we just closed on a house in the new state we live in.
And you what?
We just closed on a house in the new state we live in. So no apartments. They have plenty of room to run around and play and enjoy themselves.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So let's hear about what your attorney is doing now.
So the attorney that we hired to fight for us isn't taking on this new case.
Isn't?
No, we have a different attorney that's taken on a malpractice, negligence, abuse of government powers, and perjury to the court system. So they're getting the CD records, all the audio recordings from the courtroom. They're subpoenaing all the records from the agency. They're subpoenaing all records from our daughter's medical care. And they're seeking quite a bit of damages for this.
Well, I have no doubt that you're gonna win.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, the problem, what they don't understand, there's no dollar amount that will ever replace the moments that you missed with your daughter, the moments that she was stuck in that cage without her mom and dad. There are things you don't know how that, thank God she was young enough, but it could still very well have been so traumatizing that, you know. And look at how traumatic it was for the two of you. Nothing will ever replace those things. Your trust in people, all because you made a decision as parents to go to a different doctor.
Right. So we're taking every single one of those dollars, money, settlement, or judgment we get from this lawsuit, and we're putting it into education to stop this mess. We don't need the money. The rest of the country needs the money. The rest of the people need the money.
I think that's incredible. You know, I have a very strong belief that God chooses the people that have the strength and stuff to be able to see, stop it, and do whatever we need to do to make changes so that this does not happen again.
I know it has nothing to do with really educating people and, maybe putting out the word. It's more of the money's going to have to go to lobbying to politicians to force the different agencies to change the way they practice.
Have you thought there's and I can send you the info and get her involved, but there's a couple other people who are creating their own types of organizations to help parents that are going through this.
Absolutely.
So, that could be another thing. But, I'm not saying this in a greedy way, but I'm sure you're going to keep some for your kids, right? Like,
Of course.
Okay, good.
I'm a business now, so that's why I don't need any of that money.
Of course, but, put it toward college or whatever.
Sure.
Good.
I mean, it's going to help them, but,
So,
the American dream is having a family,
right.
having kids. Can't live the American dream as long as the nation's child protective services continues to hinder that.
Right. Now, what would you tell parents that are going through this?
Any parent that's currently doesn't have custody of their kids, get your anger out of you, get your hate out of you, remain in your place, focus on the facts, because it's not about some random person coming to take your kid and kidnapping him or her. You're now dealing with the law, the government. So you have to fight. And if you don't have money to finance an attorney, there is free help out there. There is. So anybody that is unaware of that, and I know a lot of people aren't, there are programs in every state to provide free legal counsel for these type of things. So if anybody needs it, they can use it.
I love that. I'm so happy for you guys. Is there, since you have your children, is there any way we can see those beautiful faces? Maybe a picture or something? I would love to.
I
can go check.
Sure.
I know Haley.
We'll get Haley down here.
Okay. I'm reading the comments.
Interested to see what these comments are.
Nothing bad. One person is responding to my situation with the knock on the door, and same thing, like, saying you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So true. And I think that is one thing I completely forgot to do, was I forgot to record my.
Oh.
You just don't, you're in such a state of,
I held my breath pretty quickly, and I think it's the firefighter in me in the last 20 years that prepared me for this.
How soon, that's a question, did you go back to work at all there?
They terminated me.
What?
Because of this.
Are you going after them too?
Nope, I don't need to.
I'm so sorry. That is ridiculous. Oh my goodness, you're so beautiful. Hi. Are you shy?
He really is.
What's her name?
Haley.
Haley. Hi, Haley. You're so pretty.
You're on national social TV now.
Yep.
I heard you're a big sister.
Yes,
Do you have a baby? Do you have a baby sister?
You are something else.
I bet you're a good big sister.
Yes, you are. You're showing your little sister all about the toys you have.
Can you wave?
She can wave. She just doesn't. Never met you.
I know. Well, you guys, oh, look at that smile when she looks at Daddy. Oh, you guys. I'm so happy for you. Your family is beautiful. Thank you for sharing her with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, I am now a co-host on a radio show. And if you ever want to call and just share your story on there with us, again, a little shorter, because he won't be asking you all the questions, but I think you guys have a good story for people to hear. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's nice when people who've gotten their kids back can offer hope to other people.
There's always hope. Your child is your right. Your child is your
Yes.
blood. Don't think you can't get your kids back.
Right. Well, you guys, is there anything else that you want to say, or do you?
Pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate so much you guys sharing, and you showed an immense amount of strength being able to do that. I know it's emotional, so thank you. I feel honored to hear all of that, and I hope you have an amazing day.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye, guys.
Take care.